"Get out, Elise, and don't come back." My adoptive mother, Lillian, screamed from the porch. She threw a bag of my old clothes at my feet. It burst open in the mud. "We are done wasting our money on a useless girl like you. I heard your real parents are just poor farmers from the mountains. They have 5 sons who are probably beggars. Go be a beggar with them." I looked down at my ruined shoes and then up at her. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I actually felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Lillian," I said quietly, my voice cold as ice, "the Adrain family door is easy to walk out of. But remember this, it is impossible to walk back in. Don't regret this later." Lillian and her husband Thomas just laughed. "Regret it? We're throwing out the trash. Go find your mountain brothers. Maybe they can sell you for a bag of rice." They slammed the door and locked it. I stood there in the rain for exactly 10 seconds. Then, the sound of the neighborhood changed. The quiet street started to shake. Sound of several high-powered engines approaching and tires screeching to a halt. 6 jet-black SUVs roared around the corner, cutting through the rain like sharks. They lined up perfectly in front of me. The doors opened at the same time. A man in a sharp suit, Billy Horner, the manager of the famous Peace Clinic, stepped out and ran toward me with a massive umbrella. He didn't care about his expensive suit getting soaked. He bowed so low his forehead almost touched his knees. "Boss," he shouted over the storm, "we finally found you. Your 5 brothers have been tearing the world apart looking for you. The private jet is ready. Your throne is waiting. Please, come home." I looked back at the house. The curtains moved. Lillian was peeking out, her face pale with shock. I didn't even wave. I just stepped into the car. The girl they hated was gone. The Queen was back. The interior of the black SUV smelled like expensive leather and old money. I sat in the back seat, watching the raindrops race each other down the window. Billy Horner, the man everyone in the city feared as the manager of the elite Peace Clinic, was sitting in the front. He kept looking at me through the rearview mirror with eyes full of respect, and maybe a little bit of fear. "Boss," Billy whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "Your brothers, they are already at the main house. They've been waiting since the moment we got the signal that you had left the Lillian family." "Let them wait," I said. My voice sounded flat, even to my own ears. After 10 years of being treated like a servant by Lillian and Thomas, I had forgotten what it felt like to have people waiting for me. I looked down at my hands. They were calloused from the chores Lillian made me do, but they were also steady. These were the hands of a surgeon and a fighter. The car turned off the main road and onto a private path lined with ancient oak trees. Then the Adrain estate appeared. It wasn't just a house. It was a castle. White marble pillars rose up toward the dark sky, and golden lights glowed from every single window. As we pulled up to the front circle, I saw 5 men standing under the massive stone porch. They looked like they had stepped out of a magazine. Each one was tall, sharp, and radiating power. The car stopped. Billy hopped out and opened my door, holding the umbrella high to make sure not a single drop of rain touched my head. I stepped out, my old muddy shoes hitting the pristine gravel. The 5 men froze. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind whistling through the trees. Then, the tallest man in the middle, the one wearing a suit that probably cost more than Lillian's entire house, stepped forward. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept in days. "Elise?" he choked out. "I'm home," I said simply. In an instant, the calm atmosphere exploded. "My sister," the man in the suit cried out. This was Charles Adrain, the CEO of the Adrain Group. He was the most powerful businessman in the country, known for being a cold-blooded shark in the boardroom. But right now, he was sobbing as he wrapped me in a hug that nearly squeezed the air out of my lungs. "You're so thin. What did those people do to you? I'll ruin them. I'll buy their company tomorrow and tear it down with my bare hands." "Move over, Charles. You're getting your expensive cologne all over her." A second man pushed him aside. This one was built like a tank, with a jagged scar running along his jawline. This was Jose Adrain, a captain in the Special Forces. He didn't hug me. He stood at attention and gave me a crisp salute before his face softened into a grin. "Little sister, I've got a whole battalion ready to go. Just give me the word, and those people who kicked you out will disappear." I blinked. I wasn't used to this. In the Lillian household, I was lucky if I got a hello that wasn't followed by a chore. She needs a checkup first, a third brother interrupted. This was Leroy Adrain, the medical genius. He reached out and gently took my wrist, checking my pulse with a focused frown. Her skin is too pale. Her pulse is steady, but she looks exhausted. I've already set up a private medical suite upstairs with the best equipment from Switzerland. Oh, stop being so boring, Leroy. A flashy young man with perfectly styled blonde hair laughed. This was Jones Adrain, the top celebrity in the country. He was wearing sunglasses even though it was dark outside. He flashed a smile that probably made millions of girls scream, but he only had eyes for me. She needs a makeover. I've filled her walk-in closet with the latest designs from Paris. Elise, I'm gonna make sure you're the most famous girl in the world. Finally, a younger boy with a headset draped around his neck stepped forward. He looked the most nervous. This was Logan Adrain, the national esports champion. He held out a gold-plated handheld gaming console. I built this for you. It's a one-of-a-kind. If anyone bothers you, tell me. I'll find their IP address and make their lives a nightmare online. I looked at the five of them, the CEO, the soldier, the doctor, the star, and the gamer. My brothers. They were all titans in their own worlds, and they were all looking at me like I was a fragile piece of glass. They didn't know that I was the Mafia Queen who controlled the underground docks. They didn't know I was Dr. Frida, the surgeon who had saved kings. To them, I was just their long-lost little sister. Let's go inside, Charles said, placing a protective arm around my shoulders. Mom and Dad are waiting. They've been crying since the news broke. As we walked through the giant gold-trimmed doors, the entrance hall was filled with servants. There must have been 50 of them, all lined up in 2 rows. As soon as I entered, they all bowed in perfect unison. "Welcome home, Miss Elise," they shouted. The sound echoed off the high ceilings. I felt a strange lump in my throat. For 10 years, I had slept in a cold attic. Now, I was standing in a palace. We reached the grand staircase, and a woman in a silk dress came flying down the steps. She looked exactly like me, only older. Her face was beautiful, but worn thin by sadness. Behind her was a tall man with graying hair and a commanding presence. My baby, Lillian Adrain, my biological mother, fell to her knees in front of me and grabbed my hands. She started kissing my fingers, her tears hot against my skin. I never stopped looking for you. Not for 1 second. Please, tell me you can forgive us for taking so long. Evans Adrain, my father, stood behind her. He didn't say anything, but I saw his hands shaking as he adjusted his glasses. He looked like a man who had finally found the missing piece of his soul. "It's okay," I whispered, helping my mother up. "I'm here now. We have so much to catch up on," my father said, his voice deep and thick with emotion. "But first, we must eat. We've prepared a feast." We moved into the dining hall. The table was so long, you could practically play a game of bowling on it. It was covered in silver platters of lobster, steak, and fruits I didn't even recognize. Each brother sat around me, constantly piling food onto my plate. "Eat this, Elise. It's good for your iron levels," Leroy said, putting a piece of steak on my plate. "No, try the truffles. They're imported," Jones countered. I took a bite of the steak. It melted in my mouth. It tasted like wealth. Suddenly, the heavy doors to the dining hall creaked open. A girl about my age walked in. She was wearing a beautiful pink dress and a diamond headband. She looked like a princess, but her eyes were cold. This was Jenny Adrain, the cousin who had been adopted to fill the void I left behind. She looked at the way my brothers were doting on me, and her face twisted for a split second before she forced a fake sweet smile onto her lips. "Oh, is this the famous Elise?" Jenny said, her voice dripping with fake kindness. She walked over and looked at my old muddy shoes. "Welcome home. It must be such a shock for you to be in a place like this. I hope the transition from the countryside isn't too hard. It can be difficult for people like you to learn how to behave in high society." The room went silent. The air grew cold. Charles narrowed his eyes. "Jenny, watch your tongue. Elise is the daughter of this house. You are just a guest." Jenny flinched, but she kept her smile. "Of course, Brother Charles. I just meant that since she hasn't had an education, maybe I could help her. I wouldn't want her to embarrass the family at the upcoming banquet." I put my fork down. I looked Jenny straight in the eye. I had dealt with sharks in the underworld who were much scarier than a jealous girl in a pink dress. "Don't worry about me, Jenny," I said, my voice smooth and calm. "I learn very quickly. In fact, I think I'll fit in just fine." Jenny's smile faltered. She saw something in my eyes that she didn't expect: confidence. She expected a scared little girl from the mountains, but she was looking at a queen. "Well?" Jenny sniffed, turning away. "We shall see. The Thomas family is coming over for tea tomorrow. Gregory Thomas doesn't like people who lack refinement." At the mention of Gregory Thomas, my brothers all groaned. "That arrogant jerk," Jose muttered. "He thinks he's so special just because his family owns half the city." "He's your fiancé, Elise," my mother said softly, looking a bit worried. "It was an arrangement made by your grandfather years ago. But don't worry, if you don't like him, your brothers will make sure the engagement is cancelled." "Actually," I said, thinking of the ruthless CEO everyone talked about in the news, "I'd like to meet him first." I had a secret. Gregory Thomas had been trying to hire Dr. Frida for months to treat his grandmother's heart condition. He didn't know that the girl he was about to meet for tea was the same doctor who had been ignoring his emails. As the dinner continued, my brothers kept talking, laughing, and promising me the world. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't have to look over my shoulder. I didn't have to wonder where my next meal was coming from. But as I looked at Jenny's jealous face across the table, I knew the battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. Lillian and Tomas had kicked me out, but the Adrain family was a whole new world of danger. I took a sip of water and leaned back in my velvet chair. Let them come, I thought. I'm the Mafia Queen, the miracle doctor, and the real heiress. And I'm not going anywhere. The morning sun hit the Adrain estate like a bucket of spilled gold, but I wasn't in the mood for the view. I was currently staring at a holographic screen in my private suite, my fingers flying across a virtual keyboard. "Boss, the Thomas Group just sent their 14th urgent email of the week." Billy Horner's voice came through my earpiece. "Gregory Thomas is offering another $5 million just for a 30-minute consultation with Dr. Frida. His grandmother's heart is failing, and he's getting desperate." I leaned back, watching the lines of medical codes scroll by. "Tell him Dr. Frida is on a spiritual retreat in the mountains and isn't taking patients. If he wants to save his grandmother, he should stop trying to buy people and start showing some actual sincerity." "Understood, boss. But you do realize you're meeting him for tea in 3 hours, right? As Elisa Drain, the country bumpkin fiancé?" I smirked, closing the laptop. "That's exactly why I'm not answering the email. I want to see what kind of man Gregory Thomas is when he's not hiding behind his checkbook." I spent the next hour being processed by a small army of stylists that my brother Jones had sent over. They tried to put me in a dress that looked like a giant pink cupcake, but I shot that idea down with a single look. Instead, I picked out a simple, elegant, cream-colored silk dress that reached my knees. It was expensive, but it didn't scream for attention. I brushed my long hair until it shone and left it down. When I walked downstairs, the house was a hive of activity. My third brother, Leroy, the doctor, was pacing the hallway with a medical journal in his hand. When he saw me, he stopped and adjusted his glasses. "You look healthy today, Elise," he said, his voice soft. "But Gregory Thomas is coming. He's a cold man. If he says anything that upsets you, just tell me. I know 3 different ways to make a man's gallbladder hurt without leaving a mark." I laughed, patting his arm. "Thanks, Leroy. I think I can handle one CEO." We moved to the grand sunroom, where a table was set with fine china and tiny sandwiches. My parents were there, looking nervous, along with Jenny, who was wearing enough jewelry to sink a boat. She looked at my simple dress and snickered. "Oh, Elise," Jenny sighed, adjusting her diamond necklace. "You look so plain. I hope Gregory doesn't think the Adrain family has lost its fortune just by looking at you." "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, Jenny," I replied, sitting down. "You should try it sometime. It might help people notice your personality instead of just your necklace." Jenny's face turned red, but before she could snap back, the butler announced, "Mr. Gregory Thomas has arrived." The air in the room seemed to freeze. A man stepped through the doorway, and even I had to admit he was striking. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and a suit that fit him like armor. His hair was jet black, and his eyes were like shards of ice, sharp, cold, and incredibly intelligent. This was Gregory Thomas, the man who ruled the city's economy and the man who had been blowing up my secret inbox for weeks. "Mr. and Mrs. Adrain," Gregory said, his voice a deep, smooth baritone. He gave a polite but stiff nod. He didn't even look at Jenny, who was practically vibrating in her seat trying to get his attention. His eyes landed on me. He didn't look impressed. In fact, he looked bored. "And this must be the long-lost daughter. Elise, I presume?" "I am," I said, meeting his gaze. Most people looked away when Gregory stared at them, but I stared right back. I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but it disappeared instantly. "Nice to meet you," he said, though he didn't sound like he meant it. He sat down across from me, his movements precise and controlled. "I'll be honest. I'm a busy man. This engagement was a deal made by our grandfathers, and while I respect tradition, I don't believe in wasting time on relationships that don't serve a purpose." My father cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "Gregory, Elise just got back. We were hoping you two could get to know each other." "I have 5 minutes," Gregory said, checking his silver watch. "I have a lead on a specialist I need to track down. A Dr. Frida. Everything else is secondary." I took a slow sip of my tea. "Dr. Frida? I've heard she's very difficult to find. Perhaps she doesn't like being hunted like a trophy." Gregory's eyes snapped to mine. "She isn't a trophy. She is a necessity. My grandmother is the only person I care about, and Frida is the only one who can save her. I don't care how much it costs or how much of a temperament this doctor has." "Maybe it's not about the money," I said, leaning forward. "Maybe she's waiting for you to show some heart. Doctors deal with life and death, Mr. Thomas. They don't have time for people who think a checkbook solves everything." Gregory narrowed his eyes. "You seem to have a lot of opinions for someone who grew up in the countryside." Jenny saw her chance to jump in. "Exactly. Gregory, please excuse my cousin. She doesn't understand how the world works. She probably thinks a specialist is someone who fixes tractors." Gregory didn't even look at Jenny. He kept his eyes on me. "You're different than I expected, Elise Adrain. Most girls in your position would be trying to impress me with their pedigree or their hobbies. You're trying to lecture me." "I'm not lecturing," I said with a small smile. "I'm observing, and from where I'm sitting, you look like a man who is so used to winning that you've forgotten how to ask for help." Gregory stood up abruptly. The 5 minutes were up. "I don't ask for help. I hire talent. There's a difference." He turned to my parents. "Thank you for the tea. I have work to do." As he walked toward the door, he stopped and looked back at me one last time. "I'll see you at the charity gala next week, Elise. Try to wear something that fits the occasion. It's a high society event, not a farm." With that, he was gone. "What a jerk," my brother Jones shouted, appearing from behind a curtain where he had been eavesdropping. "Did you hear him? Not a farm? I'm going to ban him from all my movie premieres." "He's so arrogant," my mother whispered, wiping her eyes. "Elise, honey, you don't have to marry him. We can end this." "No," I said, watching the dust dance in the sunlight where Gregory had been standing. "Don't end it yet. He's interesting." I went back to my room and opened my laptop. There was a new email. From Gregory Thomas, subject, final offer. "Dr. Frida, name your price. My grandmother is dying. I am willing to give you anything you want. Just save her." I felt a tiny crack in the ice of my heart. He was arrogant, yes. He was cold, definitely. But he truly loved his grandmother. I typed a short reply. From Dr. Frida to Gregory Thomas. "I don't want your money. I want you to perform a task. There is a small, struggling orphanage on the south side of the city. They need a new roof and a year's supply of food. Fix it, anonymously, and I might consider an appointment." I hit send and closed the laptop. Later that night, I went to the basement of the estate. My brother Jose, the captain, had set up a training room for me. He thought I needed to learn self-defense, now that I was a target. "Okay, Elise," Jose said, putting on his boxing pads. "Show me what you've got. Don't worry, I'll go easy on." Before he could finish his sentence, I blurred. I stepped inside his guard, swept his leg, and had my palm hovering an inch from his throat before he even realized I had moved. Jose stared up at me from the floor, his jaw hanging open. "What? Where did you learn to move like that?" "The countryside is a dangerous place, Jose," I said, offering him a hand to pull him up. You have to be fast if you want to survive." "Fast? You're a ghost." Jose laughed, shaking his head. "Man, the people in this city have no idea who they're dealing with. Between your brothers and your skills, Gregory Thomas doesn't stand a chance." I smiled, but my mind was already on the next day. I had a secret mission at the Peace Clinic, and I knew Jenny was planning something for the charity gala. I was the real heiress, and the world was starting to realize it. But the Mafia Queen? She was still in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I went to bed that night with the sound of the rain against the window, feeling more at home than I ever had with Lillian. My brothers were my shield, but I was the sword. And soon, I would show Gregory Thomas that Dr. Frida and his plain fiancée were one and the same. But first, I had to deal with a certain cousin who thought she could ruin my reputation. Jenny Adrain had no idea that she wasn't playing with a girl. She was playing with fire. And fire always burns. The following Monday, the Adrain mansion was buzzing with even more energy than usual. My fourth brother, Jones, had decided that since I was officially back, I needed to be introduced to the elite circles of the city. He had organized a high-end musical gala at the Grand Opera House, inviting every influencer, socialite, and billionaire in the region. "You have to look like a star, Elise," Jones exclaimed, waving a pair of diamond earrings in front of my face. "The whole world thinks you were raised by wolves in the woods. We need to show them you're a goddess." I sighed, letting him fix my hair. "Jones, I don't need to be a goddess. I just want to get through the night without Jenny tripping me." Jenny had been unusually quiet since the tea with Gregory Thomas. She spent most of her time on the phone, whispering and giggling. I knew she was up to something. My Mafia Queen instincts told me that when a snake stops hissing, it's getting ready to bite. When we arrived at the Opera House, the red carpet was packed with photographers. My 5 brothers walked in with me, forming a human shield of power and handsome faces. Charles looked stern, Jose looked alert, Leroy looked bored, Jones was posing for every camera, and Logan was busy playing a game on his phone. As we entered the VIP lounge, I saw a familiar face. Gregory Thomas was standing by the bar, looking even more handsome in a midnight blue tuxedo. He was talking to an older man with white hair. Master Cooper, the world-famous piano virtuoso. Master Cooper was a legend. People traveled across oceans just to hear him play. He was also the only man who knew my second biggest secret. I was his top student, the anonymous pianist known only as Gwen. I caught Master Cooper's eye. He started to smile, but I gave him a tiny, almost invisible shake of my head. He understood instantly and went back to his conversation. "Look!" Jenny's voice rang out, cutting through the chatter. She was standing in the center of a group of wealthy young women. "It's Master Cooper, and did you hear? He's looking for a new protege tonight." Jenny walked over to our group, looking smug. "Elise, it's a shame you spent your childhood in the countryside. You probably think a piano is just a heavy piece of furniture. I've been practicing for 10 years. Master Cooper actually sent me a wink earlier. I think he's going to invite me to play." I suppressed a laugh. Master Cooper didn't wink at people. He had a nervous eye twitch when he was annoyed. "That's nice, Jenny," I said mildly. "I hope your performance is memorable." The gala began, and the guests moved into the main hall. After a few opening speeches, the host announced, "Tonight, we have a special treat. Miss Jenny Adrain has requested to perform a piece for our guest of honor, Master Cooper." The crowd clapped politely. Jenny walked onto the stage, her long silk dress flowing behind her. She sat at the grand piano and took a deep breath. She started to play a piece called The Moonlight Shadow. It was a difficult song, full of fast runs and complex chords. To the average person, she sounded great. But to my trained ears, she was flat. She was hitting the notes, but there was no soul in it. Even worse, I realized halfway through that she was playing an arrangement that I had written years ago and posted anonymously online. "She's stealing Gwen's arrangement," I whispered to myself. Beside me, Gregory Thomas leaned in. His scent, sandalwood and cold rain, wrapped around me. "You look like you're judging her," he whispered. "Do you even know what song that is?" "It's a stolen melody," I said, not looking at him. "She's playing the notes, but she doesn't understand the story behind them." Gregory raised an eyebrow. "You speak with a lot of authority for a farm girl." Jenny finished her piece with a dramatic flourish. The audience cheered, and she bowed deeply toward Master Cooper. Master Cooper stood up, but he didn't look happy. He looked insulted. "Miss Adrain," he said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "That was a technical performance. But tell me, where did you find that arrangement? It hasn't been published yet." Jenny turned pale. I wrote it myself, Master. It took me months of inspiration." The room gasped. If she truly wrote it, she was a genius. Master Cooper scoffed. "You wrote it? That's interesting, because the person who wrote that piece is a genius I've known for years, the stat, and her style is nothing like yours. In fact, there's a specific trick in the final bridge that only the creator can play correctly." He looked around the room, his eyes landing on me. "Is there anyone else here who would like to try? Anyone who actually knows the soul of this music?" The silence was heavy. Jenny stood on the stage trembling. "Master, I'm sure no one else here can play it. My cousin Elise, for example, has probably never even seen a piano before today." A few people snickered. My brothers all stepped forward at once, ready to defend me, but I put a hand on Charles's arm. "I'll try," I said. The room went dead silent. I walked down the aisle, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. I felt Gregory's gaze burning into my back. I climbed the stairs and stood next to Jenny. "You can sit down now, Jenny. Let me show you what inspiration actually sounds like." Jenny hissed under her breath. "You're going to embarrass the family, you idiot." But she stepped aside. I sat on the bench. I didn't look at the keys. I closed my eyes and thought about the night I wrote this song. The night I had successfully completed my first mission as a mafia leader, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I struck the first chord. The sound was like a thunderclap. It wasn't just music, it was a physical force. I played the same song Jenny had, but it sounded completely different. It was dark, beautiful, and full of longing. My fingers moved so fast they were a blur. When I reached the trick bridge Master Cooper mentioned, I played a series of complex harmonics that made the piano sound like a full orchestra. When I hit the final note, the silence lasted for nearly a minute. Nobody dared to breathe. Then, Master Cooper began to clap. Slowly at first, then loudly. Soon, the entire hall was on its feet, the applause deafening. "Gwen," Master Cooper whispered, loud enough for those in the front row to hear. "You've finally come out of hiding." I stood up and bowed. I looked at the VIP section. My brothers were looking at me with their jaws on the floor. Jones looked like he wanted to faint with pride, but it was Gregory Thomas's face that caught my attention. He wasn't clapping. He was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, a mix of shock, suspicion, and something that looked a lot like hunger. I walked off the stage and straight toward Jenny, who was leaning against a pillar, her face the color of a ghost. "The next time you steal someone's work, Jenny," I whispered as I passed her, "make sure you're talented enough to defend it." I didn't wait for the party to end. I headed for the exit, needing some air. As I reached the balcony, a hand caught my wrist. It was firm and warm. "Elise Adrain." Gregory's voice was low. He pulled me around to face him. The moonlight hit his sharp features. "Who are you, truly?" "I told you," I said, pulling my arm back. "I'm just a girl from the countryside." "Liar," he breathed. "I've spent months tracking Gwen. I've spent months tracking Dr. Frida. And now a girl who was supposed to be a nobody shows up and plays like a master." He stepped closer, pinning me against the balcony railing. "You're a box of secrets, aren't you? And I think I'm going to enjoy opening every single one." "Be careful, Mr. Thomas," I said, my heart racing just a little. "Some boxes are full of things that bite." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the moonlight. As I got into the car with my cheering brothers, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Billy. "Boss, Gregory Thomas just made the donation to the orphanage. He wants to meet Dr. Frida tomorrow morning at the Peace Clinic. What are your orders?" I looked out at the city lights. The game was getting dangerous. "Tell him I'll see him," I whispered. "But tell him he should bring a gift for his grandmother, something money can't buy." The morning after the gala, the Adrain mansion felt like a battlefield. My brothers were still buzzing about my piano performance, but the atmosphere shifted the second a sleek, silver Maybach pulled into the driveway. "He's back," Logan muttered, not looking up from his gaming console. "The Ice King is here to finish what he started." I looked out the window. Gregory Thomas stepped out of the car, looking as sharp as a razor. But today he wasn't alone. An elderly woman with a kind face and a pale complexion leaned on his arm. This was Madame Thomas, the grandmother he loved more than his own life. "Elise, honey," my mother said, smoothing her dress with shaking hands. "Gregory called this morning. He said he's here for a final discussion regarding the engagement. Your father and we will support whatever you decide." I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "Let's go see what he has to say." We gathered in the grand parlor. The air was so thick with tension you could have cut it with a knife. Gregory sat across from us, his face a mask of cold professionalism. Madame Thomas sat beside him, her eyes wandering over to me with a curious, gentle smile. "I'll be direct," Gregory started, his voice echoing in the silent room. "After our last meeting, and after seeing the talents displayed last night, it is clear that Miss Elise is a remarkable person. However, a marriage without a foundation of truth or mutual understanding is a disaster. I am here to formally request an annulment of the engagement between the Thomas and Adrian families." My brothers bristled instantly. Jose looked like he was ready to tackle Gregory through the window. "You think you can just toss our sister aside because you've got a busy schedule?" "Wait," I said, raising my hand. I looked at Gregory. "You want to cancel the engagement because there's no understanding? Or is it because you've already given your heart to someone else? Someone like the mysterious Dr. Frida?" Gregory's eyes flickered. He didn't expect me to be so blunt. "My search for Dr. Frida is professional. My desire to end this engagement is personal. I don't want a wife who has spent her life hiding in the shadows of the countryside, and I certainly don't want a marriage built on an old man's whim." Madame Thomas sighed, patting Gregory's hand. "Gregory, dear, don't be so hasty. This girl has a light in her eyes that reminds me of." Suddenly, Madame Thomas's breath hitched. Her face went from pale to a terrifying shade of gray. She clutched her chest, her fingers digging into Gregory's sleeve. "Grandmother?" Gregory's cold mask shattered. He caught her as she began to slide off the chair. "Grandmother, stay with me." "Call an ambulance," my father shouted. "There's no time." Leroy, the doctor brother, rushed forward, checking her pulse. "Her heart is failing. It's an acute attack. We need a defibrillator and an emergency surgical kit now." The room dissolved into chaos. Gregory was white as a sheet, holding his grandmother's hand as if he could pull the life back into her through sheer will. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I reached into my small purse and pulled out a leather roll of silver acupuncture needles, tools I always carried. "Get back," I said. My voice wasn't the voice of a farm girl or even the real heiress. It was the voice of the Mafia Queen. It was the voice of Dr. Frida. "Elise, what are you doing?" Gregory snapped, his eyes wild with grief. "This isn't a game. She needs a real doctor." "I am a real doctor," I said, my gaze locking onto his. "If you want her to live, move." Something in my eyes stopped him. For the first time, Gregory Thomas looked truly afraid, not of me, but of losing the only person he loved. He stepped back. I knelt beside Madame Thomas. My fingers moved with a speed that made Leroy gasp. I placed 3 needles in her chest and 2 in her wrists, hitting the pressure points that regulated blood flow to the heart. "She's not breathing," Jose cried out. "She will," I muttered. I leaned down and performed a specific manual chest compression technique that I had perfected during my years in the underground. 1 minute passed. 2. The silence in the room was deafening. Then, Madame Thomas took a long, gasping breath. The color began to creep back into her cheeks. Her eyes fluttered open, and she looked up at me. "Oh," she whispered. "The angel. She saved me." I didn't stop until her pulse was steady. I pulled the needles out and tucked them back into the roll just as the paramedics burst through the front door. "Her vitals are stable," I told the paramedics, my voice perfectly calm. "She had a myocardial infarction triggered by stress. I've stabilized the electrical rhythm of her heart. Take her to the Peace Clinic. Tell Billy Horner that Dr. Frida sent her." The paramedics looked at me, then at the needles, then at each other. They didn't ask questions, they just moved. As they wheeled Madame Thomas out, the room was silent again. But the vibe had changed. My brothers were looking at me like I was a stranger. My parents were crying. And Gregory? He was standing by the door, his hands shaking. He looked at me, then at the spot where I had just performed a medical miracle on his parlor floor. "You," he breathed. "The needles, the technique, the order to see Billy Horner." He walked toward me, stopping just inches away. I could feel the heat radiating off him. "You're Dr. Frieda." "I told you, Mr. Thomas," I said, wiping a drop of sweat from my forehead. "Some boxes are full of things that bite. You wanted to annul the engagement because you didn't think I was refined enough. But it turns out I'm the only person in this world who can keep your family whole." Gregory reached out, his thumb brushing against my cheek. His touch was no longer cold, it was electric. "I came here to break a promise, but now I realize I'd be a fool to let you go." "The annulment?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Gregory looked at the legal papers sitting on the coffee table. He picked them up, and without breaking eye contact, tore them into 100 pieces. "There will be no annulment," he said, his voice a low growl of possessiveness. "You are my fiancée, Elisa Drain, and from this moment on I am never letting you out of my sight." I looked at the shredded paper on the floor. I had saved his grandmother, but I had trapped myself in a whole new kind of trouble. Behind us, Jenny was standing in the shadows, her face twisted with a hatred so pure it was frightening. She had watched the whole thing. She had seen the way Gregory looked at me, not with boredom, but with an intense, burning passion. "This isn't over," Jenny whispered to herself, her nails digging into her palms. But as my 5 brothers surrounded me, cheering and hugging me, I knew I was ready for whatever she had planned. I had revealed one more secret, and instead of pushing Gregory away, I had pulled him right into the center of my world. The atmosphere in the Adrain mansion had shifted from a fortress of protection to a den of celebration. My brothers were so thrilled that Gregory had torn up the annulment papers that they decided to throw an official welcome home party for me. "Tonight is about you, Elise," Jones declared, wearing a suit that shimmered like a disco ball. "No doctors, no business meetings, and definitely no farm talk. Just music, dancing, and the finest drinks in the city." I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting the straps of a deep emerald green silk dress. It was a gift from Charles, and it made my eyes look like forest fire. I felt a strange flutter in my chest. Usually, I was the one in control, the one making the moves in the dark. But lately, between my brother's smothering love and Gregory's intense gaze, I felt like I was losing my edge. "Boss," Billy's voice crackled in my hidden earpiece. "The local underworld leaders are hearing rumors that the Queen has returned to the city. They're nervous. They're sending spies to the party tonight to see if the rumors are true." "Let them come," I whispered, applying a layer of dark red lipstick. "If they see me as a billionaire's pampered daughter, let them. It's the perfect cover." The party was grander than anything I had seen. The ballroom was filled with the scent of lilies and expensive champagne. Every powerful person in the city was there, whispering about the real heiress who had saved the Thomas matriarch with nothing but a few needles. Gregory arrived late, as usual. When he walked in, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. He didn't look at the mayors or the bankers. He looked straight at me. He walked over, his eyes scanning my dress with a look that made my skin tingle. "You look dangerous tonight, Elise," he murmured, taking my hand and kissing the back of it. "I thought you liked danger, Mr. Thomas," I teased. "I like things I can understand," he replied, his voice low. "And I still don't understand you." The night went on, and I found myself being pulled into conversation after conversation. My brother Jones kept handing me glasses of a sparkling gold liquid. "Try this, Elise. It's a vintage from 1945. It's light, I promise. Now, I have a secret. For all my skills, surgery, combat, piano, leadership, I have one massive weakness. I cannot handle alcohol. Even a chocolate with a drop of rum in it makes my head spin. But in the heat of the party, distracted by Gregory's presence, I didn't think. I took a sip, then another. By the third glass, the room started to feel very tilted. "Elise, you're looking a bit flushed," Leroy said, stepping toward me with a concerned doctor's frown. "I feel sparkly," I said, giggling. The Mafia Queen had left the building. In her place was a very happy, very uncoordinated girl. Just then, the spies Billy had mentioned decided to make their move. 3 men in cheap suits, clearly not belonging to the elite crowd, approached me while my brothers were busy across the room. "Miss Adrain," the leader said, his voice a rough growl. We've heard you've got quite the reputation. Why don't you come outside for a private chat? We have some friends who want to meet the girl who thinks she can run the docks." Normally, I would have handled this with a cold look and a silent signal to my guards, but the wine had other ideas. I looked at the man, then at his cheap tie. "Your tie is crooked," I said, my voice surprisingly loud. "And you smell like old socks." The man's face darkened. He reached out to grab my arm. "Don't get smart with me, girl." Before his hand could even touch my silk sleeve, something in my brain clicked into queen mode, but with a drunken twist. I didn't just defend myself. I performed a spinning hook kick that sent the man flying backward into the buffet table, landing face first in a giant bowl of shrimp cocktail. The music stopped. The room went silent. "Whoops," I said, swaying slightly. I looked at the other two men. "You want some shrimp too?" They lunged at me. I ducked, a bit too low, and accidentally headbutted one in the stomach while sweeping the other one's legs with a clumsy but powerful kick. Within 30 seconds, 3 trained thugs were groaning on the floor, covered in appetizers. I turned around, looking for my brothers. Instead, I saw Gregory. He was standing there, holding a glass of water, staring at me with his mouth slightly open. "Elise?" he asked, his voice shaking with a mix of shock and amusement. "Did you just take down 3 men while holding a glass of champagne?" "They were being mean," I said, pouting. I stumbled forward, and Gregory caught me before I could hit the floor. "She's drunk," Leroy whispered, rushing over. "She has 0 alcohol tolerance." "Jones, you idiot, what did you give her?" "I didn't know," Jones cried, looking horrified. I looked up at Gregory, my eyes unfocused. I reached up and poked his nose. "You're very pretty, Mr. CEO. But you're too grumpy. You should smile more." Gregory's ears turned pink. He looked around at the stunned guests and my overprotective brothers, who were all trying to figure out if they should be proud of my fighting skills or worried about my sobriety. "I'm taking her home," Gregory announced, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Like heck you are," Jose shouted, stepping forward. "She's our sister." "She's my fiancée," Gregory countered, lifting me up into his arms like I weighed nothing. "And right now, she's a public liability. I have a private villa 10 minutes from here. I'll keep her safe until she sleeps it off. You can come pick her up in the morning." I snuggled into Gregory's chest, feeling the warmth of his suit. "He smells like sandalwood," I told the room at large. "I like sandalwood." My brothers looked at each other. They knew Gregory wouldn't hurt me, partly because he loved his grandmother, and partly because they'd kill him if he did. "Fine," Charles growled. "But if there's a single scratch on her, Thomas, I'll buy your company and turn it into a parking lot." Gregory didn't even answer. He carried me out of the ballroom, through the rain, and into his car. As the door closed, I felt the world fading away. "Dr. Frida, Mafia Queen, whoever you are," Gregory whispered as he smoothed my hair away from my forehead. "You are going to be the death of me." I woke up the next morning in a bed that felt like a cloud. The sunlight was bright, and my head felt like a drum was beating inside it. I sat up, realizing I was in a strange, minimalist bedroom. The door opened, and Gregory walked in. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket, and his sleeves were rolled up. He was holding a tray with a glass of orange juice and some aspirin. "Good morning, Sparkly," he said, a tiny, rare smirk playing on his lips. I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "Tell me I didn't headbutt anyone." "You did," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "And you told me I was pretty." I froze. "I did?" "You did." He leaned in closer, his eyes searching mine. "You also mentioned something about running the docks. Elise, I've known you for 2 weeks, and every day I find out you're someone else. A doctor, a pianist, a fighter. What else are you hiding?" I took the aspirin and swallowed it with the juice. I looked at him, my mind finally clear. "The world is a dangerous place, Gregory. Sometimes you have to be many people just to survive." "Well," he said, reaching out to touch my hand, "from now on, you don't have to survive alone. Even if you're a mafia queen, you're still my fiancée." I smiled. The secret was still safe, mostly, but for the first time, I felt like someone actually saw me, the real Elise, behind all the masks. But our moment was interrupted by his phone buzzing. He looked at it, and his face went cold. "It's your brother Charles," Gregory said. "He says Jenny has gone missing, and she took your mother's medical records with her." My blood turned to ice. The hangover was gone instantly. "She's going to the grandpa," I whispered. "She's going to try to prove I'm a fraud." "Not on my watch," Gregory said, standing up. "Let's go." The game was changing again, and this time it was personal. The drive back to the Adrain estate was a blur of high-speed turns and tense silence. Gregory drove with a focused aggression while I sat in the passenger seat, my mind racing through medical protocols. "Why would Jenny steal your mother's records?" Gregory asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "My mother's heart condition isn't just weakness," I said, my voice turning cold. "I've suspected for a week that someone has been tampering with her medication. If Jenny has the records, she's either trying to hide the evidence or she's realized that I've been secretly treating her. She wants to show Grandpa that I'm practicing medicine without a license, to get me exiled." When we arrived, the mansion was in an uproar. My father was sitting on the sofa, his head in his hands. My brothers were surrounding him, except for Leroy, who was missing. "Where is she?" I demanded, stepping into the hall. "Upstairs," Charles said, his face dark. "She collapsed 10 minutes ago. Leroy is with her, but he says her heart rhythm is completely erratic. He doesn't understand why the stabilizers aren't working." I didn't wait for another word. I sprinted up the grand staircase, Gregory right at my heels. I burst into my mother's bedroom to find Leroy standing over her with a portable monitor. The beeping was fast and shallow, the sound of a life fading out. "Leroy, move!" I shouted. "Elise, stay back!" Leroy cried, his eyes wide with panic. "I've given her the maximum dose of digitalis, but her heart is rejecting it. I don't know what's happening." I shoved him aside and looked at the IV bag. I grabbed it, pulled it down and sniffed the entry port. My eyes narrowed. Someone added a calcium blocker to this bag, mixed with her current meds. It's not a cure, it's a poison. It's causing a total heart block. "What?" Leroy gasped. "That's impossible. Only family has access to this room." "Exactly," I said. I turned to Gregory. "Lock the door. Don't let anyone in, not even my father. If I don't do this now, she's gone in 5 minutes." Gregory didn't ask questions. He slammed the heavy oak door and turned the deadbolt. I stripped off my silk overshirt, revealing a black tank top, and washed my hands frantically with the surgical scrub I kept in my bedside drawer. I pulled out my hidden medical kit, the one with the silver F for Frida engraved on the side. "Leroy, I need you to be my assistant," I commanded. "Stop being my brother and start being a doctor. Grab the atropine and the external pacer pads." Leroy stared at the kit. That's the Frida kit. "Elise, are you?" "Focus," I barked. For the next 45 minutes, the room felt like a sacred temple. I worked with a precision that was almost inhuman. I didn't have a full surgical team, so I had to be the lead surgeon, the anesthesiologist, and the scrub nurse all at once. I inserted a temporary pacing wire through her jugular vein, guided only by touch and my memory of her anatomy. My sweat dripped onto the floor, but my hands never shook. Beside me, Leroy was trembling, but he followed every order I gave. Gregory stood by the door, a silent guardian, watching me with an expression of pure awe. He had spent months looking for Dr. Frida, and here she was, saving his future mother-in-law on a bedroom carpet. "Clear," I whispered, pressing the manual trigger on the pacer. Thump. The monitor let out a long, steady beep. Then a rhythmic, healthy thump, 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 thump. I sank back onto my heels, my lungs burning. My mother's breathing slowed and deepened. The gray tint on her skin began to fade, replaced by a faint, healthy pink. "She's stable," I breathed. Leroy fell back against the wall, sliding down to the floor. "I've studied the best hospitals in the world," he whispered, looking at me with tears in his eyes. "I've never seen anyone move that fast. You didn't just save her, Elise. You performed a miracle." I stood up, wiping my forehead with the back of my hand. My eyes landed on the trash can near the vanity. Tucked inside was a small, empty vial of the calcium blocker. "Jenny," I said, the name tasting like venom. I walked to the door. "Gregory, open it." As soon as the bolt clicked, my father and the other 4 brothers tumbled in. They saw my mother resting peacefully and let out a collective sob of relief. But I didn't stay for the hugs. "Where is Jenny?" I asked my brother Jose. "She's in the study with Grandpa," Jose said, looking confused. "She said she found something disturbing in your luggage and wanted Grandpa to see it before you tricked the family any further." "Perfect," I said. "Let's go see her." I walked down to the study, my green dress stained with a bit of medicine and sweat, looking like a warrior returning from battle. Gregory walked beside me, his presence like a looming shadow. I kicked the study doors open. Inside, Grandpa Adrain, a stern man with a silver cane, was looking at a pile of papers on his desk. Jenny was standing next to him, looking triumphant. "And that's not all, Grandpa," Jenny was saying. "These records show that Elise has been stealing drugs from the clinic. She's probably an addict, or worse, she's trying to poison Aunt Lillian so she can inherit the—" "Finish that sentence, Jenny," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Finish it, and I'll make sure you never speak again." Jenny jumped, clutching her chest. "Elise, how dare you interrupt?" Grandpa was just about to call the police. I walked straight up to the desk. I didn't look at Jenny, I looked at Grandpa. "Grandpa, the papers she gave you are missing the final page. The page that shows the chemical analysis of the IV bag I just pulled out of my mother's arm." I threw the empty vial I'd found in the trash onto the desk. It rolled and stopped right in front of Jenny. "That vial has your fingerprints on it, Jenny," I said. "And my mother almost died 10 minutes ago because of it. I had to perform emergency surgery to restart her heart." Grandpa Adrain looked from the vial to Jenny, his eyes narrowing. "Is this true? Lillian collapsed?" "She's fine now," Gregory stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. "Because your granddaughter, Elise, is the most brilliant doctor I have ever seen. She just saved your daughter-in-law's life while this girl was in here trying to bury her." Jenny started to shake. "He's lying. She's just a country girl. She probably used some mountain voodoo. Grandpa, you can't trust her." I stepped into Jenny's personal space. I was shorter than her, but in that moment, I felt 10 feet tall. "I'm not just a country girl, Jenny. I am the daughter of this house. And you? You are a guest who forgot her place. You tried to kill my mother to hide your own theft. Did you think I wouldn't notice you've been skimming money from the Adrain Medical Fund for years?" I pulled a small flash drive from my pocket, something Billy had delivered to me an hour ago. "Every transaction is on here. Every lie, every cent you spent on those diamonds while my mother's health suffered." Jenny fell to her knees, her face white. "Grandpa, it was a mistake. I was just scared she would replace me." Grandpa Adrain stood up, his face a mask of disappointment. He looked at me, then at the vial, then back at the shaking girl on the floor. "I adopted you to give you a family, Jenny," the old man said, his voice trembling with rage. "And you tried to destroy mine. Get out. Leave the jewelry. Leave the clothes. If I see you on this property by sunset, I will have the police handle the attempted murder charge." "Grandpa, no," Jenny wailed, but Jose and Charles were already there, grabbing her by the arms and dragging her out of the room. The study became quiet. Grandpa Adrain looked at me for a long time. Then he slowly bowed his head. "I have been blind, Elise. I let a snake into my garden because I didn't trust the flower that grew in the wild. Can you forgive an old man?" I walked over and took his hand. "Family is about more than trust, Grandpa. It's about protection. And I will always protect this family." Gregory stepped up behind me, placing a hand on my waist. It was a gesture of total support. "Well," Grandpa said, a small smile finally appearing on his face. "It seems the Adrain family has finally found its true heart. And it seems Mr. Thomas has finally found a reason to stay." I looked up at Gregory. He was looking at me not as a doctor, a pianist, or a fiancé, but as his equal. "It's not over yet," he whispered in my ear. "We still have a gala next week, and I think it's time the world met the real Dr. Frida." I smiled. The house was safe, my mother was alive, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't just surviving. I was winning. After the storm of my mother's medical crisis and Jenny's exile, the Adrain mansion felt peaceful for exactly 12 hours. By the next morning, a different kind of tension had taken over. I found my youngest brother, Logan, in the high-tech gaming lounge he'd built in the East Wing. Usually, he was the calmest of the five, a quiet genius who spoke more with his keyboard than his voice. But today, he was staring at a monitor with a look of pure despair, his headset lying cracked on the floor. "Logan? What happened?" I asked, stepping over a pile of energy drink cans. He didn't even look up. "It's over, Elise. The national championship is tonight. My team, the Starstruck Elites, was supposed to be the favorite. But our star carry player just sent a message. He's been bought out by the rival team, the Shadow Skulls. They paid him $5 million to fake an injury and drop out. I leaned against the doorframe. Can't you just get a substitute? At this level? Logan laughed bitterly. The competition starts in 3 hours. Anyone good enough to play is already on a team. If we don't show up, we forfeit. My sponsors will sue me, and the Adrain name will be mocked in the tech world. Jenny's friends are already posting about it online, saying the Adrain luck has finally run out. I walked over and picked up his headset. I looked at the game on the screen. War of Thrones. It was a complex battle arena game that required insane reflexes and strategic thinking. Is the carry position the one that does all the damage? I asked. Logan nodded. Yeah, you need an average actions per minute of at least 400. It's like playing a piano concerto while someone is throwing rocks at your head. Why? I sat down in the professional gaming chair next to him. Logan, do you remember when I told you the countryside was dangerous? I didn't just spend my time fighting thugs and studying herbs. In the underground, we used simulators to train our brains. I used to hold the world record on the dark web servers under the name Zero. Logan's head snapped toward me so fast I thought he'd get whiplash. Zero? The legendary ghost player who disappeared 3 years ago? The one who beat the Korean champions using only one hand? I was bored, I said with a shrug. Set up an account for me. I'll be your substitute. Elise, this is a live stadium event. Logan whispered, his eyes widening. There are 20,000 people watching in person and millions online. If you mess up, the internet will roast you forever. Then don't let me mess up, I said, cracking my knuckles. Let's go. 2 hours later, we arrived at the cyber arena. The atmosphere was electric. Neon lights flashed, and the roar of the crowd sounded like a literal ocean. As we walked toward the players' tunnel, we ran into the Shadow Skulls. At the front was their captain, a smug guy named Rex, and standing next to him was the traitor from Logan's team. Hey Logan, Rex shouted, laughing. I heard you're looking for a sub. Did you find a janitor to fill the seat? Or maybe you're just going to let your little sister click the mouse for you? Logan went red, but I stepped in front of him. I was wearing a team jersey that was slightly too big for me, with my hair pulled back in a fierce ponytail. Actually, I said, my voice steady, I'm the one who's going to make you quit professional gaming tonight. I'd suggest you start looking for a job in retail now. It'll save you time later. Rex laughed so hard he nearly choked. A girl? You brought a girl to the Nationals? This is going to be a bloodbath. We took our seats on the stage. The giant screens above us showed our faces to the world. The announcers were losing their minds. Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like Logan Adrain has brought a complete unknown as his secret weapon. Wait, is that a girl? In the history of the Pro League, no female player has ever. Shut up and watch, I muttered, putting on my headset. The game started. For the first 5 minutes, I played cautiously, letting Rex and his team think I was a noob. They started mocking me in the global chat, calling me Adrain's mascot. Logan, I whispered into the team comms. Go for the center objective. I'm going to bait them into the forest. Elise, that's 4-on-1. You'll die, Logan cried. Trust me. I moved my character into the trees. Rex and 3 of his teammates followed, smelling an easy kill. Just as they surrounded me, my fingers exploded across the keyboard. To the audience, it looked like my character turned into a blur of steel and magic. Triple kill, the announcer screamed. Quadra kill. The stadium went silent. Then, it erupted. I didn't stop. I moved across the map like a ghost, taking down towers and objectives before the other team even realized I was there. My actions per minute counter on the screen hit 600. The commentators were shouting so loud their microphones were clipping. Who is this girl? She's playing like a god. Look at those reflexes. She just dodged a point-blank ultimate. Is she even human? In the VIP box, I could see Gregory Thomas standing up, his eyes glued to the screen. He looked like he wanted to jump over the railing and hug me. My other brothers were jumping up and down like crazy people, screaming my name. In the final play, I cornered Rex's character at their home base. I didn't kill him immediately. I danced around him, showing him exactly how much faster I was before delivering the final blow. Victory. I took off my headset. The sound of the crowd was like a physical wall of noise. Logan hugged me so hard we almost tipped over. You did it, "Zero. You're actually zero," he yelled. We walked to the center of the stage to trophy. Rex was sitting in his chair, staring at his keyboard in total shock. His career was over. Nobody would ever forget how he was destroyed by a farm girl. As we walked off stage, Gregory was waiting in the tunnel. He didn't care about the cameras or the thousands of fans. He walked up to me, grabbed my waist, and lifted me off the ground. "A doctor, a pianist, a fighter, and now a world champion gamer?" he whispered, his eyes burning with pride and something much deeper. "Is there anything you can't do, Elisa Drain?" "I still can't drink wine," I joked, breathless. He laughed, a rare, beautiful sound. "That's fine. I'll be your designated driver for life." But as we celebrated, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a restricted number. I stepped away from the noise to answer it. "Boss," Billy's voice was grim. "Grandpa Adrain's lawyer just called. Someone leaked a photo of your Mafia Queen tattoo from your shoulder to the press. They're calling an emergency family meeting. They want to prove you're a criminal leader to get you disinherited. And Elise? It's not just Jenny this time. Someone higher up is pulling the strings." I looked at my brothers and Gregory, who were all smiling and happy. The Gamer Queen victory was sweet, but the real war was coming home. "Get the files ready, Billy," I said, my face turning back into a mask of stone. "If they want to see the Mafia Queen, I'll show her to them. But they aren't going to like what happens next." The trap was set. It was time to see who would walk into it. The victory at the cyber arena should have been the highlight of my return, but as I walked into the Adrain mansion that night, the air felt like ice. The lights in the grand parlor were blindingly bright. My grandfather sat in his high-backed velvet chair, his silver cane gripped so hard his knuckles were white. Standing in the shadows was a man I hadn't met yet, Uncle Marcus, the brother my father rarely spoke about. Beside him sat a high-powered lawyer with a stack of folders. "Elise," Grandpa said, his voice trembling, "a photo has been sent to every major news outlet in the city. It shows a tattoo on your shoulder, the mark of the Spider Lily Syndicate. They say it belongs to the Queen of the Underworld. Tell me this is a lie." I felt Gregory's hand tighten on my waist. My brothers moved as one, forming a wall in front of me. "This is a setup," Jose shouted. "Elise has been with us for weeks. She's a doctor, a pianist. She's not a criminal." Uncle Marcus stepped forward, a nasty smirk on his face. "Then let her show us her shoulder. If there's no tattoo, I'll personally apologize. But if there is, it means our real heiress is a high-level mobster who's been using our family name to wash her dirty money. We can't have a criminal inheriting the Adrain fortune." I looked at Marcus. He was the one who had helped Jenny. He was the one who wanted the company for himself. "Grandpa," I said, stepping past my brothers, "I was lost for 10 years. I lived in places where being refined didn't keep you alive. I had to learn to lead, to fight, and to protect those who couldn't protect themselves." "So it's true?" Grandpa whispered, looking like he'd aged a decade in a second. "You are a mafia leader?" "I am the head of the Peace Clinic's security division," I said firmly. "We take down human traffickers and drug runners that the police can't touch. If you call that mafia, then so be it. But every cent I have made has gone to orphanages and hospitals." "A criminal is a criminal," Marcus barked. "Lawyer, show the documents." The lawyer opened a folder. "We have statements from 3 witnesses who claim Elisa Drain ordered a hit on a rival businessman last month. Under the Adrain family code, any member involved in violent crime is automatically disinherited and stripped of their name." "That's a lie." Gregory stepped forward, his voice like a clap of thunder. "I was with her that night. We were at the opera. I am the CEO of the Thomas Group. Are you calling me a liar, Marcus?" Marcus hesitated, but then he pulled his trump card. "Maybe you're being blinded by love, Gregory, but the photo doesn't lie. Elise, show the tattoo." I felt the room hold its breath. My brothers looked at me, fear in their eyes. They didn't care if I was a queen, but they knew what this would do to Grandpa's heart. Slowly, I reached up and moved the strap of my dress. On my shoulder was a tattoo. It was a beautiful, intricate red spider lily. The room gasped. Jenny, who was peeking through the doorway from the hall, let out a silent cheer. "There it is," Marcus shouted. "The mark of the beast. Grandpa, sign the papers. Kick her out." Grandpa looked at the tattoo, his eyes filling with tears. "Elise? Why?" "Look closer, Grandpa," I said quietly. I walked up to him and knelt by his chair. I took a small alcohol wipe from my pocket and rubbed the tattoo. To everyone's shock, the red ink smeared and vanished, leaving behind a small, jagged scar in the shape of a star. "It was a temporary ink cover," I explained. "I knew someone was watching me. I knew someone would try to use my past against me, so I put on a fake mark to see who would jump at the chance to destroy me." I turned to Marcus, who looked like he'd just seen a ghost. "The real question is, Uncle Marcus, how did you know exactly where that tattoo was supposed to be? I've never shown my shoulder in this house." Marcus stuttered. I saw the photo, the leak." "No," I said, pulling a second device from my pocket. "The photo was taken by a hidden camera in my bathroom, a camera you installed. And the witnesses you hired. Billy Horner just finished interviewing them. They've already confessed that you paid them $50,000 each to frame me." Billy stepped into the room, followed by 2 police officers. "We have the wire transfer records, Mr. Adrain, and we found the camera's receiver in your office." The lawyer immediately backed away from Marcus, dropping the folders. I was just hired to present the papers. I didn't know they were forged." Grandpa Adrain stood up, his face burning with a righteous fury. He raised his silver cane and pointed it at Marcus. "You would frame your own niece? You would try to ruin this family's joy for a few shares of stock?" Grandpa's voice was a roar. "Marcus Adrain, you are no longer a son of mine. Officers, take him away." As Marcus was led out in handcuffs, screaming that he would get his revenge, the room finally exhaled. Jenny tried to slip away, but Cosé caught her by the collar of her dress. "Not so fast, cousin. I think you have some packing to do. For real this time." Grandpa sat back down, breathing hard. He looked at me, his eyes full of pride and apology. "You played them, Elise. You used their own trap against them." "In the underworld, Grandpa, we call it a counter-gambit," I said, leaning my head against his knee. Gregory walked over and pulled me up into a hug. He didn't say anything, but I could feel his heart racing against mine. He had been ready to lose everything to defend me, even when he thought the tattoo was real. "One more thing," I said, looking at my family. "The scar under the ink, the one shaped like a star, that's the real mark. It's the mark given to children who were rescued from the trafficking ring 10 years ago. I wasn't the leader of the criminals, Grandpa. I was the girl who destroyed them from the inside so no other child would ever be lost again." My mother, who had been watching from the doorway, ran forward and sobbed into my shoulder. My 5 brothers surrounded us, forming a circle of protection that no one would ever break again. "The real heiress isn't just a title," Charles said, wiping his eyes. "It's a promise, and as long as we're alive, no one touches our sister." I looked at Gregory. He leaned down and whispered, "I think it's time for that. Final banquet, no secrets, no masks, just the queen and her king." I smiled. The trap was gone, the enemy was defeated, but the biggest night of my life was still to come. The night of the Adrain Thomas Grand Anniversary Gala arrived, and the entire city was under a spell of anticipation. This wasn't just a party, it was the final stage. The farm girl was gone. The hidden doctor had been revealed. Now it was time for the world to see the woman who truly held the power. I stood in front of the mirror in the master suite. My dress was a masterpiece, a gown of midnight black silk with a high slit, embroidered with silver threads that looked like spider lilies under the light. Around my neck was the heart of the North, a diamond necklace my 5 brothers had pooled their resources to buy for me. "Boss," Billy's voice came through my earpiece, but he wasn't whispering this time. "The perimeter is secure. Every exit is manned by our elite security. The Thomas family has arrived. It's time." I walked down the grand staircase of the Opera House, where the gala was held. The moment I appeared, the chattering crowd went silent. My 5 brothers were waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Charles in his CEO suit, Jose in his formal military dress, Leroy, Jones, and Logan, all looking at me with fierce pride. They stepped aside, opening a path for me to walk through. At the end of the path stood Gregory Thomas. He looked breathless. He didn't wait for me to reach him. He walked up the last few steps and took my hand. "You look like you're about to take over the world, Elise," he whispered. "Only if you're standing next to me," I replied. The night proceeded with toasts and music, but the real climax began when Grandpa Adrain took the stage. He looked stronger than he had in years. "Tonight," Grandpa announced, his voice booming, "I am officially naming my granddaughter, Elise Adrain, as the primary heir to the Adrain Group and the head of our charitable foundations. But there is someone else who has something to say." Gregory stepped onto the stage, pulling me with him. He took the microphone and his eyes scanned the room, landing on the few remaining doubters and the hidden spies in the back. "Many of you have spent weeks gossiping about my fiancée," Gregory said, his voice cold and commanding. "You called her a country girl. You tried to frame her as a criminal. You even tried to annul our engagement." He paused, looking down at me with a softness I had never seen before. "I was the fool who almost let her go. But tonight, I want the world to know the truth. Elise Adrain isn't just the heart of the Adrain family. She is the woman who saved my grandmother's life. She is the genius behind the Peace Clinic, and she is the only person I will ever call my wife." He dropped to one knee right there on the stage. The cameras flashed like 1,000 stars. He pulled out a ring, a rare blue diamond that matched the star scar on my shoulder. "Elise, will you run this city with me?" I felt a tear prick my eye. "Yes, Gregory, I will." As he slipped the ring onto my finger and kissed me, the room erupted in applause. But the coronation wasn't over. Suddenly, the heavy doors at the back of the hall burst open. It was Lillian and Thomas, the poor guardians who had kicked me out in the rain only weeks ago. They were disheveled and frantic, pushed forward by my brother Jose's guards. "Elise, wait!" Lillian screamed, her voice cracking. "We didn't know. We were told you were poor. We're your family too. You can't leave us with nothing. Our house is being foreclosed." I stepped to the edge of the stage, looking down at them. I remembered the mud on my shoes and the bag of clothes thrown in the rain. "I told you the Adrain door was easy to exit, but impossible to re-enter," I said, my voice echoing with the authority of the Mafia Queen. "You didn't want a daughter. You wanted a servant. You didn't want a family. You wanted a paycheck." I looked at Billy, who was standing by the door. "Billy, give them exactly what they gave me when I left." Billy walked over and handed Lillian a small plastic grocery bag. Inside was a single loaf of bread and a bus ticket back to the mountains. "Don't come back," I said. As the guards led the sobbing Lillian and Thomas away, the last ghost of my past was gone. I turned back to my 5 brothers, my parents, and my husband-to-be. The gala turned into a celebration that lasted until dawn. I danced with Charles, who promised to build me a hospital. I laughed with Logan about our next gaming tournament. I hugged my mother, who was finally healthy and glowing. As the sun began to rise over the city, Gregory and I stood on the balcony overlooking the skyline. "So," Gregory said, wrapping his arms around me from behind, "the real heiress has returned. The Mafia Queen is crowned. What's next for Elise Adrain?" I leaned my head back against his shoulder, looking at the diamond sparkling on my hand. I thought about the 10 years I spent in the dark and the bright future ahead of me. "Next," I smiled, "I think I'm going to enjoy being loved. It's the one secret identity I've always wanted to have." Gregory kissed my temple as the light of the new day hit the city. The war was over, the Queen was home, and for the first time in my life, everything was exactly as it should be.